They didn't convince me. I wanted to believe. This is my nightly ritual again. The fire, the bourbon, and the kind of silence where I hear my thoughts a little too clearly or loudly. I stare into the flames, listen to them crack and spit, and replay everything that happened. And the only thought that won't let go of me is, how could I have believed that? I suppose I should have gone to a priest. But the truth is, I doubt any priest would want to hear all the things I've done. This fire, it's the only witness that doesn't look away. Before I tell you about the hardest period of my life, allow me to ask one thing. Please like the video and subscribe, but only if this confession truly resonates with you. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It means something to me, knowing who I'm opening my soul to tonight. I will not give names. There will be no cities, no countries. Not because I'm afraid, and not because it isn't true, just because this is not a story about where it happened. It's a story about what stayed, and pain. Pain doesn't have coordinates. I didn't grow up religious. That might be important. I wasn't indoctrinated. No one handed me scripture when I was 5. No one warned me about the wrong paths. No one told me anything. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe the absence of belief is still a kind of hunger. And I got used to the ache. So used to it, that when someone finally told me they had an answer, I leaned in before I even asked the question. They didn't ask for money. They didn't ask me to move. They didn't talk about God. They talked about patterns, and memory, and stillness. It started with a podcast. I was driving late one night, back from nowhere in particular, when I clicked on an episode titled, "We Remember Because We're Meant to." The speaker's voice was slow, smooth, soothing. He didn't preach, he didn't sell, he just unwrapped thoughts like they were already mine. He said, "Memory is more than the past. It's the pattern you're meant to break." And then he went quiet for 10 full seconds. I remember it exactly, because I was about to skip forward, but something stopped me. Something in the silence. It wasn't dramatic. It just felt like he was letting me think. And God, no one ever let me think. I listened to 41 episodes in 10 days. Not all of them made sense. Some were long pauses, whispers, fragments of phrases. Things like, "You already know what's coming." It's not guilt, it's the memory of who you were before. We don't worship, we remember. I don't know if you've ever been exhausted enough to stop questioning something, but that's what happened. I didn't feel converted. I felt like someone had taken my hand and said, "You've been walking in the dark long enough. We're not dragging you anywhere, we're just walking too." It wasn't a church, it wasn't a compound, it was a room. I found it after episode 50. There was a number, not a hotline, not a promise, just a voice message. Leave a word. If it's the right word, someone will meet you. That was it. I waited 3 days before calling. I don't know why I did. Loneliness doesn't feel like an emergency until it does. I left one word. Forget. No one answered. No text, no email, nothing. But 3 nights later, there was a letter slipped under my apartment door. No return address, no name. Just one line, handwritten. "If you truly want to forget, come and remember with us." There was a time. There was a street name, no building number, no suite. I should have laughed. I should have ignored it. I should have told myself it was just a game. But something about it felt less crazy than the things I was already telling myself. I went, of course I did, and no, I won't describe what the place looked like. That's not the story I'm telling. What matters is how I felt the second I walked in. I expected coldness. I expected weird stares. I expected robes or chanting or incense, but no one even looked at me. There were 8 or 9 people. They sat in silence, not in formation, not in any special order, just still. There was no leader, no welcome, only a chair left empty near the back. I took it, and for 40 minutes, nothing happened. Nothing except a silence that made my head ring. And then one person, I never saw their face, whispered, "You remembered. That's why you're here." No one moved, no one reacted, no one said anything else. And I remember sitting there, heart racing, palms wet, telling myself, this is insane, this is a mistake, this is nothing. But some part of me, some deep, ancient part, was whispering back, "Stay." Just stillness. Just one slow nod from the person across the circle, and then silence again. That was the first time I felt something like absolution. Not forgiveness, not cleansing. Just the momentary relief of being seen and not shamed. And once you feel that, you'll do almost anything to feel it again. I didn't notice when things started tightening. Rules became rituals. Rituals became rhythms, and rhythms became law. We weren't allowed to wear color anymore. Too distracting, they said. So we dressed in grays and off-whites and muted browns. I got used to watching my own skin lose vibrancy. I told myself it was part of the process, the peeling back they always spoke about. Peeling back the ego, the identity, the noise. But sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of myself in a reflection, a window or a spoon, and not recognize the shape of my shoulders anymore. I was shrinking. At night, I started dreaming in echoes, not voices, just breathe. Dozens of people breathing in unison in a room with no ceiling, no beginning, no end. I'd wake up sweating, not from fear, but from the cold realization that I didn't miss the sound of my own thoughts. That's how far I'd gone. Someone tried to leave once. She was quiet, careful. She didn't make a scene. But we noticed. You always notice when the energy changes. She stopped participating in offerings. She kept her hands in her sleeves during reflection hour. And then, one morning, she just didn't come. No goodbyes, no closure, just absence. We were told she had misaligned. That was the word, misaligned, like a bone popping out of joint. And like any joint, we were told, sometimes it's better not to reset it, but to remove it entirely. No one asked where she went. I didn't either. But I thought about her constantly, especially in those moments when I felt the same ache she must have felt. The ache that says, maybe I've gone too far. The next alignment, they handed us small stones. We were told to carry them for 7 days, in our pocket, our shoe, anywhere close to the body. Mine was smooth and dark. It looked like glass, but it was heavy. Heavier than it should have been. We weren't told why, only that the stone knows your burden. I carried it in my boot, and every step felt like a bruise that couldn't be seen. By the 3rd day, I forgot it was there. By the 6th, I couldn't imagine walking without it. One night, I found myself whispering to it, not words, just breathe, like in the dreams. That's when I knew something had cracked open in me. Something I hadn't noticed before, or maybe something I'd chosen not to. Because here's the truth I still struggle with. They didn't force me to stay. They never locked the doors. No one chased me. No one begged me. I stayed because I needed them to mean something. I stayed because the silence was better than the noise I came from. I stayed because I wanted to believe that maybe this time belonging wouldn't cost me myself. But I was wrong. And deep down, I think I knew that all along. It was raining the day I stopped going. Not symbolically, not some dramatic storm that matched my inner chaos. Just a regular gray rain. boring, quiet, like most endings. I remember standing outside the building where we met. I was early, I always was. But that day, something in me stalled. My hand was on the doorknob, and I just didn't turn it. No one came looking. No one texted. They wouldn't. That wasn't the way things worked. Leaving was a choice. So was silence. But it wasn't defiance that made me walk away. It was emptiness. And not the peaceful kind we were always chasing. Just the kind that echoes too loudly when nothing fills it anymore. I walked home in the rain. No umbrella. Didn't care. I think I wanted to see if I could still feel discomfort. Pain, cold, hunger, anything. I passed the coffee shop I used to visit, the bookstore where I used to spend hours. I looked at those places like artifacts from another life, like they belonged to someone I had buried. It didn't happen all at once, the re-entry. I didn't suddenly return to the world, smiling and reborn. I didn't start going to parties or posting selfies or telling people what I'd been through. I didn't tell anyone, actually, because how do you explain it? How do you say, I joined something without a name, and left someone I no longer recognize? The nights were the worst. Not because of nightmares, but because of the silence, the very thing I'd once worshipped. It became unbearable, too complete, too clean. I started playing white noise just to fall asleep. Rain, wind, a train passing in the distance. Anything to remind me I was still here, still part of a world that hadn't forgotten how to make sound. A month passed, then 2. I started eating regular meals again. Stopped folding my clothes into exact squares. I let dust gather on the windowsill. And for the first time in over a year, I looked at my reflection and didn't flinch. Not because I liked what I saw, but because I recognized the sadness in my eyes as my own. That was the beginning, not of healing, but of ownership. You never fully leave a place like that, not in the way people expect. I still pause before speaking sometimes, still catch myself scanning for approval in a room that doesn't require it, still feel guilt when I laugh too loudly, but I'm here, and that's more than I thought I'd be. I kept the stone. I don't know why. It sits in a drawer next to things I should have thrown away. An old receipt, a broken watch, a letter I never sent. Sometimes I take it out, feel its weight, let it remind me what I carried and what I let go of and what I still haven't. Because even now, there's a part of me that misses the silence, the ritual, the stillness, the feeling of being held in something larger than myself, even if that thing was a lie. I've never told this to anyone before, not fully, not like this, and I'm not asking for sympathy or validation or even forgiveness. I just needed a place to put it down. And maybe, if you've listened this far, you were meant to hold it for a while. Sometimes I imagine what would have happened if I'd stayed. It's not a fantasy, not some temptation. It's a quiet, slow-burning curiosity. What would I have become? Would I have started enforcing the rules instead of just obeying them? Would I have sat in the center of the circle, nodding as others made their offerings? Would I have stopped missing myself? There's a version of me in that timeline who never left. He's still there now, barefoot, quiet, nodding along. And I wonder if he feels peace, or just absence. People say, at least you got out. They mean well. But it's not a rescue story. There was no rope, no door kicked open, no sudden awakening. It wasn't escape. It was erosion. Little by little, I started caring less about being pure and more about being real. Less about their version of peace and more about my version of pain. Because pain, at least, was mine. I remember once, someone outside the group, a barista, I think, said, "You look like you haven't been sleeping." And I smiled. Because no one in the group would have ever said something so human. they would have said, "You are being hollowed." Let it continue. Or, "Your shadow is thinning." That means progress. But, "You look tired?" That hit harder than any mantra. It reminded me that I had a body, a face, that someone could still see it. That's the strangest part. The thing no one tells you. You don't leave a cult and suddenly return to who you were. That version of you doesn't exist anymore. You build a new self. Not from memory, but from fragments. From instincts that survived. From strangers who smile at you for no reason. From songs you forgot you loved. You build slowly, uncertainly, and you keep some scars on purpose, just so you never forget how deep it got. I'm still building. There are days I slip. Days I find myself reaching for silence like a cigarette. Comforting, poisonous, familiar. There are days I want someone to tell me what to do, to lift the burden of decision, to make the world make sense again. But mostly, there are days like this, the fire, the bourbon, and the quiet, not their quiet, mine, the kind I've earned, the kind that doesn't erase me, but lets me sit beside myself, not as a ghost, not as a follower, but as a man who once wanted to believe, and chose, in the end, to believe in something else, even if it was just his own voice, finally echoing back, unbroken, still there, still his.